Her heels clicked softly on the hotel corridor's marble floor as she approached room 417. The door was slightly ajar. She smiled to herself. Maybe he was on a call. But just as she raised her hand to knock, she froze. Inside, she heard James's voice, cold and sharp, so unlike the tender tone she knew. "Make sure everything goes as planned," he said, his deep voice steady. "Once she's out of the picture, her inheritance will be transferred in no time." Please subscribe to Boundless Echoes if you haven't. You don't want to skip a bit of this interesting story. The sun glimmered brightly over Los Angeles that Saturday morning. The city seemed to hum with life, birds chirping, car horns echoing faintly in the distance, and the scent of blooming jasmine floating through the hotel courtyard. Inside the lavish suite of the Beverly Grand Hotel, Sarah Collins was radiant, dressed in her stunning white gown, her heart racing with joy. Today was her wedding day, the day she had dreamed about since she was a little girl. The hairstylist had just finished curling her golden hair into soft waves that framed her glowing face perfectly. Her makeup artist gave the final touch, a gentle brush of shimmer across her cheeks. Her best friend and maid of honor, Rita Brooks, stood beside her, smiling and handing her a glass of champagne. Sarah's laughter filled the room, bright and carefree. "I can't believe I'm finally marrying James," she said dreamily, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Rita's smile widened, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes, a shadow that Sarah didn't notice. "You deserve it, babe. You've waited so long for this," Rita said, handing Sarah her bouquet of white roses tied with a silver ribbon. Sarah hugged her tightly, completely unaware that the same woman she trusted with her heart was hiding the darkest secret of all. A few moments later, as the wedding planner announced that the ceremony would begin in 45 minutes, Sarah decided to surprise her groom. She wanted to see James before walking down the aisle, not for tradition's sake, but for reassurance. She wanted to tell him again how much she loved him, how much he meant to her. So, without telling anyone, she quietly slipped out of the suite and made her way to the room where James was staying. Her heels clicked softly on the hotel corridor's marble floor as she approached room 417. The door was slightly ajar. She smiled to herself. Maybe he was on a call. But just as she raised her hand to knock, she froze. Inside, she heard James's voice, cold and sharp, so unlike the tender tone she knew. "Make sure everything goes as planned," he said, his deep voice steady. "Once she's out of the picture, her inheritance will be transferred in no time." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Her fingers trembled as she covered her mouth. "Are you insane?" whispered a woman's voice. It was Rita's. Sarah's world began to spin. She leaned closer, struggling to hear more. "Relax," James continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. "She won't even see it coming. The pills in her drink will do the rest. By the time the ceremony starts, she'll be gone, and we'll both be free." Sarah felt her stomach twist violently. She couldn't breathe. Tears welled up as she stumbled back, her mind reeling. Her fiancé and her best friend, plotting her death? She bit her lip to stop a cry from escaping, then turned and ran, her heels clacking unevenly as panic overtook her. She barely noticed guests greeting her as she passed. Her only thought was to find her father, someone who could save her. She burst into her father's suite, gasping for air. "Dad! Dad!" she cried, clutching her chest. Mr. Collins, startled, rushed toward her with his wife close behind. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked, alarmed. But before she could answer, she began to feel dizzy. Her vision blurred, her heart pounded uncontrollably. They're trying to kill me," she whispered weakly before collapsing to the floor. Mrs. Collins screamed, and the room erupted in chaos. Hotel staff hurried in, followed by the wedding planner, guests, and then James Wilson himself, putting on his best performance. He knelt beside her, feigning panic. Sarah, wake up," he cried, shaking her hand dramatically. Inside, however, his mind raced with satisfaction. "The pills worked faster than I thought." Within minutes, paramedics arrived and rushed Sarah to St. Mary's Hospital. James rode along in the ambulance, holding her hand and pretending to weep. When they arrived, doctors rushed her into the emergency room. After several tense minutes, Dr. Theodore Edwin, the family's longtime physician, emerged to deliver the news. "She's in critical condition," he said gravely. "We'll do our best." James let out a practiced sob, wiping away tears he didn't feel. "Please, doctor, save her," he said shakily. Once he stepped outside, however, he pulled out his phone and sent a text message. "It's done. She won't be waking up again." But fate had other plans. Hours later, in the stillness of the hospital ward, Sarah stirred faintly. Her eyelashes fluttered open, and confusion filled her hazy mind. She blinked at the white ceiling, then at the 4 drip beside her bed. Her body felt weak, but her memory was sharp. She remembered everything she'd overheard. And at that moment, she made a silent vow. "They think I'm dead? Then I'll make sure they see the ghost they created." When Nurse Jenkins walked in and saw her awake, her eyes widened in shock. "Miss Collins, you're awake," she exclaimed. Sarah quickly pressed a finger to her lips. "Please, don't tell anyone," she whispered hoarsely. "Not even my family. Especially not James." The nurse hesitated but nodded, sensing something deeper at play. Sarah leaned back weakly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "They tried to kill me," she murmured, "but I'm not going to die before I get the truth." And as the city lights of Los Angeles glowed through the hospital window that night, Sarah's transformation began. From a bride who almost died for love to a woman who would fight to reclaim her life, her dignity, and her justice. The morning sunlight filtered gently through the blinds of Sarah Collins's hospital room. She sat upright in bed, still weak but fully conscious. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence, reminding her that she was alive, though barely. Every beat felt like a whisper of defiance against the betrayal she had suffered. As the door creaked open, Dr. Theodore Edwin walked in, his white coat flapping lightly. He was a man in his late 40s, calm, intelligent, and deeply loyal to the Collins family. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice full of relief. "Thank God you're awake. Everyone thinks you're gone." Sarah looked at him steadily, her eyes red from crying but filled with determination. "Then let's make them believe that," she said firmly. The doctor paused, not sure he'd heard her correctly. "What do you mean?" he asked, setting down her chart. She leaned forward weakly, lowering her voice. "Dr. Edwin, I heard everything. James and Rita, they tried to kill me. If I go back now, they'll finish what they started. I need your help. I want to fake my death." Dr. Edwin blinked in disbelief. "Sarah, that's extreme. Do you understand what you're asking?" he said. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I've given these people my heart, my trust, my entire life, and they repaid me with poison. The only way to expose them is if they believe I'm gone." The doctor sighed deeply, pacing for a moment. He knew it was risky, but something in Sarah's voice, that mix of pain and courage, convinced him she meant it. "All right," he said finally. "If we do this, you must follow my instructions exactly." A faint smile touched Sarah's lips. "I trust you, doctor. You're the only one I can trust now." That night, when the hospital grew quiet, Dr. Edwin began his plan. He injected Sarah with a rare medication that slowed her heartbeat and body temperature to near death. Within minutes, the monitor flatlined. Nurses rushed in, alarms blaring. "We've lost her," one shouted. Dr. Edwin placed his hand on Sarah's wrist and pretended to confirm the obvious. "Time of death, 10:27 p.m., he announced solemnly. The hospital corridors echoed with whispers the next morning. The bride died on her wedding day. News spread quickly across Los Angeles. Outside St. Mary's Hospital, reporters gathered, flashing cameras at every car that drove by. Sarah's family wept bitterly, while James Wilson put on a show worthy of an actor. He stood before the cameras, wiping fake tears. "She was my world," he told the press, his voice trembling. "I don't know how to live without her." But when the cameras were off, his true face returned, cold, satisfied, and greedy. He and Rita met secretly at a cafe 2 days later. "It worked," Rita whispered, almost giddy. "No one suspects a thing." James smirked, leaning back in his chair. "I told you, baby, once the will is read, we're set for life." What neither of them knew was that Dr. Edwin had hidden Sarah in a private medical facility outside the city. For 10 long days, she rested, watched, and waited, alive but declared dead to the world. During those days, her mind burned with both grief and purpose. "They'll show who they truly are," she said to herself. "And when they do, I'll be watching." The Collins family mansion became the center of mourning. Her coffin was displayed in the grand living room, surrounded by flowers and candles. It was decided that before the official reading, each family member and close friend would be allowed to spend a few minutes alone with her body. On the first day, James entered the room, his mask slipping the moment the door closed. He placed a hand on the coffin and laughed quietly. "Goodbye, sweetheart," he whispered cruelly. "Thanks for the fortune. You were more useful dead than alive." Rita joined him moments later, her hand on his chest. "We did it," she said softly. "No one suspects us." James kissed her forehead, murmuring, "Soon it'll all be ours." Unbeknownst to them, a hidden camera placed by Dr. Edwin recorded everything. On the second day, Sarah's two step-siblings, Melanie and Trevor, came in together. Instead of mourning, they argued bitterly over her wealth. "I told you she'd leave most of it to me," Melanie hissed. "Please," Trevor snapped, rolling his eyes. "She never liked you. You're delusional." Their voices echoed through the hall, exposing their greed to the silent room. On the third day, her father, Mr. Collins, and her stepmother entered. Sarah's father sighed dramatically, holding his wife's hand. "Well," he muttered, "at least this simplifies things." Mrs. Collins frowned. "Don't speak ill of the dead," she whispered sharply. But he shrugged. "Oh, please. She barely called us. Let's not pretend this is a tragedy for us." Their words sliced through the quiet like knives. On the fourth day, a woman dressed in black entered quietly. It was Sarah's estranged mother, the woman she hadn't seen in years. Tears streamed down her face as she placed a trembling hand on the coffin. "My baby, I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you," she whispered. "If only you knew how much I loved you, despite what your father said." Her sobs filled the room, and even Dr. Edwin, watching from the surveillance feed, felt his eyes sting. On the fifth day, Marcus Reed, Sarah's loyal driver, entered alone. He looked at her coffin for a long time before speaking. "You were the kindest person I ever met," he said quietly. "I tried to warn you about them, but you wouldn't listen. I loved you. I just never had the courage to tell you." His voice cracked, and he brushed away tears. From her hidden recovery room, Sarah watched every moment on a screen, her heart breaking and hardening at once. She had seen betrayal, greed, and love laid bare before her eyes. But she wasn't done yet. "Let them think they've won," she said to Dr. Edwin that night. "When the will is read, they'll face the truth, and me." Dr. Edwin nodded solemnly. "Then we'll make sure justice comes, Miss Collins." 10 days after the tragedy that had shocked Los Angeles, the Collins estate buzzed with tension. The heavy silence of grief had been replaced by greed, curiosity, and whispers of inheritance. The mahogany doors of the grand living room were thrown open, revealing a long table surrounded by anxious faces. Everyone had gathered for the reading of Sarah Collins's will. At the head of the table sat Attorney Clark Mason, the family's lawyer, holding a brown envelope with Sarah's name printed in bold. Beside him, Mr. and Mrs. Collins sat stiffly, pretending to mourn. Across from them sat James Wilson and Rita Brooks, trying to mask their excitement under black clothes and false tears. Melanie and Trevor, Sarah's step-siblings, fidgeted nervously, whispering to each other. When everyone had settled, Attorney Mason cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I want to inform you that Miss Collins recorded a personal message to be played at this meeting," he said, inserting a flash drive into the projector. The lights dimmed slightly, and all eyes turned toward the screen at the far end of the room. The video began with a flicker of light. Then there she was, Sarah Collins, sitting gracefully on a white chair, smiling faintly. Gasps filled the room. Mrs. Collins clutched her husband's arm. Rita's face went pale. James stiffened in his seat. "If you're watching this," Sarah's recorded voice began, calm but cold, "then it means I'm no longer with you. But before my estate is divided, there are some truths that must come to light." The screen cut to a clip, hidden camera footage. Gasps turned to horror as James appeared on screen, standing beside Sarah's coffin, smirking. His voice echoed through the room. "Goodbye, sweetheart. You were more useful dead than alive." The next clip showed him kissing Rita. "We did it," she whispered. The room erupted in chaos. Melanie covered her mouth in shock. Trevor cursed under his breath, and Mr. Collins slammed his hand on the table. "This can't be real," he shouted. Rita trembled, her entire body shaking as she looked at James, who sat frozen, his eyes wide with disbelief. But the video wasn't over. It continued to show snippets of the others. Her step-siblings arguing over money, her father dismissing her death coldly, and finally, her mother crying with genuine sorrow. When the screen went black again, the only sound was the faint hum of the projector. Sarah's voice returned. Now you all know who truly loved me and who didn't. To my father, Mr. Collins, and my stepmother, you taught me that blood means nothing without compassion. You're cut off from everything. Mr. Collins gasped, gripping the table. To my half-siblings, Melanie and Trevor, I forgive you, but you'll receive nothing. Maybe it will teach you to value people more than possessions. Melanie began to cry, realizing her greed had cost her dearly. Then Sarah's tone softened. To my mother, who I was kept from for so long, I leave you my estate in Malibu and a third of my assets. You deserved my love, not my silence. Tears streamed down Mrs. Collins's face. Finally, Sarah's eyes glimmered in the video. To Marcus Reed, my loyal driver and friend, thank you for your honesty and kindness when no one else showed it. You will inherit what remains of my fortune and control of my company. Use it wisely. The lawyer hit pause, but Sarah's image lingered on the frozen screen, poised, confident, and unbroken. Everyone sat in stunned silence. Then, before anyone could speak, the doors of the mansion swung open. The room went still. Standing there, alive and radiant in a white suit, was Sarah Collins herself. Rita screamed. Mrs. Collins fainted. James's jaw dropped as he stumbled back in terror. You're supposed to be dead, he stammered, his voice shaking. Sarah stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Surprised to see me, James? She asked coldly. You should be. I heard every word you said. James backed away slowly, glancing at the door as if considering escape, but two uniformed LAPD officers entered from behind her. Mr. James Wilson, Ms. Rita Brooks, one officer said firmly. You're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy. Rita burst into tears, clutching at James's arm. James, do something, she screamed. But James stood frozen, his face drained of all color. The officers handcuffed them both as the rest of the family watched in shock. Sarah turned to her father, who still sat speechless. You all buried me too soon, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. But now you get to live with what you've done. She looked toward her mother, who was now standing with tears in her eyes. Sarah walked over and hugged her tightly. I'm sorry I stayed away so long, she whispered. I know now who truly loved me. Dr. Theodore Edwin stepped into the room quietly, a proud smile on his face. Welcome back, Miss Collins, he said. Justice is finally served. Marcus Reed, who had been standing in the corner, walked toward her, his eyes glistening. You did it, he said softly. You really did. Sarah smiled warmly and took his hand. No, she said, we did. The guests who had gathered for the will reading could hardly believe their eyes. The woman who had been declared dead just days ago stood tall, her spirit stronger than ever. She turned to the room one last time and said, Evil may hide behind love, but truth will always find its way. As the police led James and Rita away, Sarah walked out of the mansion with her mother and Marcus by her side. The cold November air brushed against her face, but it felt like freedom. The nightmare was over. She was no longer the broken bride. She was a survivor. And as the sun began to set over Los Angeles, Sarah Collins took one last look at the house where her pain began, then smiled, knowing her new life was just beginning. What would you have done if you were Sarah? Should Sarah forgive her father and step-siblings, or cut them off forever? Tell us your thoughts in the comment section. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more emotional, amazing stories that touch the heart and teach real-life lessons. Don't forget to comment where you are watching from, so we can give you a shout-out. See you in our next video.